Ethan lived a quiet life in a small, neat apartment at the edge of the city. He was a single father, raising his son Liam after losing his wife several years ago. Life had taught him to be careful, to avoid unnecessary trouble, and to keep to himself. His days were simple, but predictable. He went to work, came home, cooked dinner for Liam, helped him with homework, and made sure he got to bed on time. Evenings were quiet, sometimes lonely, but he preferred it that way. The world, he believed, was complicated enough without adding strangers into it. Their apartment building was old but cozy. Most of the neighbors were polite but distant. People would say hello in passing, but nobody stayed for long conversations. Ethan liked it that way. He liked knowing that his little world was calm and safe. Liam, on the other hand, was curious about everything. He loved exploring the hallways and peeking into other apartments, always asking questions about who lived where. Ethan would usually warn him to be careful, reminding him that not everyone in the world could be trusted. One day, a moving truck pulled up next door. Ethan noticed the workers unloading boxes that seemed oddly shaped and covered with strange markings. He watched quietly from his window, curiosity mixing with caution. Soon after, a woman and a small child appeared in the doorway. Ethan froze for a moment. There was something unusual about them. Their skin had a subtle shimmer under the afternoon sun, and their movements were careful, almost delicate. The woman looked tense, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. The little girl clung to her hand tightly. Ethan couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange sense of concern. His instincts told him to stay away, yet part of him wanted to help. The mother said little, only nodding politely to the neighbors she passed. The little girl, however, seemed curious. She peeked out from behind her mother's side, her large, expressive eyes filled with a mixture of fear and wonder. Ethan felt a strange tug at his heart. There was something familiar in her expression, a sense of being alone and needing someone to trust. Days passed. The mother rarely left the apartment, and when she did, she moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. The little girl sometimes wandered near the doorway, pretending to play, but always staying close to her mother. Ethan noticed that even the simplest things seemed frightening for them. A loud noise in the hallway, a sudden knock on the door, or even the sound of a neighbor moving furniture made the mother flinch. He realized they were living in constant fear. One evening, as Ethan was returning home from work, he saw the little girl standing alone in the dim hallway. She was looking at the door to her apartment, her small hands pressed together nervously. Ethan paused, unsure if he should intervene. Then, as if sensing his presence, she turned toward him, her eyes wide and uncertain. There was no fear of him, only a silent plea for help. He felt a deep empathy for her. It reminded him of Liam when he was scared of the dark or when he had nightmares after his mother passed away. Ethan approached slowly, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The little girl hesitated, glancing back at her mother's apartment. Then she whispered something so quiet that Ethan had to lean closer to hear it. I think our door is broken," she said, her voice trembling. "Mommy's scared." Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't realized the mother had such fear that even the safety of their own door could not comfort her. He nodded slowly, kneeling slightly to meet the girl's eyes. "I can take a look," he said. "I'll see if I can fix it for you." The little girl's eyes widened with relief. A small, hopeful smile appeared on her lips. She nodded quickly, then took a step back and motioned for him to follow. Ethan followed her into the apartment. He noticed immediately that the place was dimly lit, almost empty and perfectly clean. It was as if the mother had removed everything that could be dangerous or noisy. Ethan could feel the tension in the air, silent weight that made the apartment feel smaller than it really was. The door they wanted him to fix was unusual. It wasn't like any door Ethan had ever seen. It had strange panels and a faint glow along the edges, and it seemed fragile, as if a wrong touch could break it completely. The little girl stood beside it, wringing her small hands together. Ethan crouched and examined the door carefully, noticing the worn hinges and the uneven lock. He realized that this was not just a normal repair. If he made a mistake, it could cause fear or even danger for them. The little girl watched him closely. "Are you sure you can fix it?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled gently. "I'll do my best," he said. "Don't worry," as he worked. The mother watched from a distance. Her posture was tense, but there was a glimmer of trust in her eyes. Ethan felt a strange connection forming. He didn't know these people, yet he felt responsible for their safety. The mother's fear seemed to weigh on him almost physically. He realized that sometimes kindness was the only way to bridge the distance. Between strangers, hours passed as he carefully adjusted the hinges and tested the lock. The little girl remained close, sometimes whispering encouragements or asking questions about the tools he was using. She was fascinated by the way he worked, and Ethan found himself smiling despite the seriousness of the situation. There was a quiet understanding between them. Words weren't always needed. Actions spoke louder than explanations. Finally, the door was fixed. It closed smoothly, and the lock clicked securely. The little girl's eyes sparkled with joy, and she ran to hug her mother. Ethan watched quietly, feeling a sense of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that sometimes helping someone else could heal a part of your own heart as well. That night, as Ethan returned to his apartment, he felt a subtle shift in the building. The new neighbors were no longer just strange people next door. They were living beings with fears, hopes, and a need for trust. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. He didn't yet understand the full story of the mother and daughter, but he knew he would be there if they ever needed him again. For the first time in years, Ethan felt that quiet spark of purpose. Life wasn't just about keeping to yourself or avoiding trouble. Sometimes life was about stepping in when someone needed help, even if it was frightening or unfamiliar. And in that quiet hallway, with a little alien girl's eyes shining with hope, Ethan realized that his simple act of kindness could make a world of difference. He returned home to Liam, who was waiting with his homework and a small bowl of cereal. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't say much about the neighbors. He didn't need to. Actions mattered more than words. That night, as the rain pattered against the window, Ethan felt ready for the unexpected, ready to be the kind of person who could protect, help, and care not just for his own son, but for those who needed a friend. And so, life quietly shifted for Ethan. The world outside his door was still complicated, still unpredictable, but he no longer felt entirely alone. Somewhere next door, a little alien girl was sleeping safely, her mother finally feeling a bit less fear. Ethan didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he understood something important. Even small acts of courage could build trust, and even strangers could become family in their own quiet, unspoken way. It was a rainy night when Ethan heard a soft, almost hesitant knock on his door. He had just finished putting Liam to bed and was sitting in the living room, sipping a cup of tea. The rain tapped rhythmically on the window, and the apartment felt quiet and calm. But the knock broke the silence. Ethan frowned. At this hour, who could it be? He glanced at the clock. Nearly 10 o'clock. He wasn't expecting anyone, and the thought of opening the door to a stranger made him hesitate. Still, something inside him urged him to respond. He got up slowly, his steps quiet against the wooden floor. He approached the door and peeked through the peephole. Outside stood the little alien girl, her small frame soaked from the rain. Her hair was damp and clung to her face. Her eyes were wide, and there was a flicker of fear mixed with hope. Ethan's heart softened instantly. He opened the door just a crack, careful but ready to help. "I need help," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. She glanced nervously over her shoulder, as if afraid someone might see her. Can you fix our door, Mommy?" "She's scared," Ethan paused. The words were simple, but the meaning was heavy. He realized that this small child had come to him, a complete stranger, because her mother was afraid. He felt a mixture of concern and responsibility. He could see her shivering in the rain, her tiny hands clasped together tightly. He didn't know exactly what he would face inside, but the fear in her eyes left no room for hesitation. "Okay," he said gently. "I'll help. Come in quickly before you get any colder." The little girl smiled briefly, relief washing over her small face. She stepped into the apartment, leaving wet footprints on the floor. Ethan quickly grabbed a towel and gently dried her off, noticing the shivers that ran through her small body. "Thank you," she whispered, almost shyly. She held onto the towel, hugging it close to herself. Ethan nodded, trying to reassure her with a warm smile. "Where's your mother?" he asked softly, guiding her toward the couch. She pointed to the door across the hallway, her tiny fingers trembling. She's in there. She won't come out. She's scared." Ethan felt a twinge of worry. He had glimpsed her before, an alien woman who seemed to carry the weight of constant fear. But he didn't let that stop him. He grabbed his toolkit from the kitchen and motioned for the little girl to lead the way. When he stepped into their apartment, the atmosphere struck him immediately. The place was dimly lit, almost like it was trying to hide from the world. Strange shapes covered with cloths leaned against the walls. A soft metallic hum filled the room, barely noticeable, but persistent. Ethan could sense tension in every corner, as if the apartment itself was holding its breath. The little girl led him to the door, glancing over her shoulder nervously. "This way," she whispered. Ethan nodded and knelt to inspect the door. It was damaged in several places. The frame was slightly bent, and the hinges were loose. The lock was delicate, almost intricate, unlike any door he had ever fixed before. Ethan realized that this was no ordinary repair. If he made a mistake, it could make things worse. But he couldn't turn back now, with this little girl watching him, trusting him. He worked carefully, checking each hinge, tightening screws, and examining the lock mechanism. The little girl crouched nearby, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it broken?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan replied gently. "But I can fix it. Don't worry," she nodded, then hugged her knees and watched silently. As he worked, the mother finally appeared. She moved cautiously from the shadows, her eyes darting around as if scanning for danger. When she saw Ethan, she froze for a moment. Fear was visible in her posture, but there was also a faint hint of trust in her eyes. She didn't speak at first, only standing quietly and observing. Ethan noticed how tense her shoulders were, how carefully she held herself as if expecting trouble at any moment. "Don't worry," Ethan said softly, keeping his focus on the door. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." The mother's eyes flickered to her daughter and then back to Ethan. Slowly, she relaxed a little, the first sign of ease he had seen in days. She stepped aside, letting him work, though she stayed close to the little girl. Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. Trust was delicate, but it could grow, even in the darkest of circumstances. Time passed slowly as Ethan worked. Every movement had to be careful, precise. The door's hinges were worn and fragile, and the lock mechanism was unlike any he had seen. He tested it multiple times, ensuring it was secure, but still easy to open. The little girl asked questions quietly, her voice a small comfort against the tension in the room. "Why does it open like that? What's this tool for?" Ethan answered each question patiently, explaining in simple words. She listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes looking amazed. The mother watched silently, occasionally shifting her weight nervously. Ethan noticed that she flinched at sudden sounds, even from the small child, and that every shadow seemed to make her uneasy. He understood that fear was not just in her mind, it was in every movement, every reaction. It made him determined to help, to give them a sense of safety, even if only for a moment. Finally, after careful adjustments and tests, the door clicked into place. Ethan stood back, wiping his hands on his jeans. He motioned for the mother to try it. She hesitated, then slowly grasped the handle and pushed. The door opened smoothly, without a sound or hiccup. Relief spread across her face, and she smiled faintly. For the first time, Ethan saw her relax. The little girl clapped softly, her eyes shining. "It works. Thank you," she exclaimed, hugging her mother tightly. Ethan felt a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt in a long time. He realized that this simple act, fixing a door, had restored a small piece of courage and comfort to their lives. He smiled, feeling a sense of purpose and connection he hadn't known he was missing. The mother finally spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "Thank you," she said, her tone genuine and relieved. Ethan nodded, understanding that sometimes words were not enough to express gratitude. They had shared a silent bond through trust, fear, and a small act of kindness. He knew this was only the beginning. There was much more to their story, and perhaps danger still lingered outside. But for now, in this quiet apartment, they had safety and hope. The little girl walked over to Ethan and handed him a small, folded piece of paper. "If we ever need help again, can we come to you?" she asked, shyly. Ethan smiled and nodded. "Yes, anytime. I'll be here." She hugged him briefly, then ran back to her mother, who watched with cautious relief. Ethan turned to leave, feeling a subtle shift in the room's energy. The fear had not vanished completely, but it had eased. Trust had been given and received. That night, as Ethan returned to his own apartment, he reflected on what had happened. He realized that life was unpredictable, and sometimes fear and courage existed side by side. Helping someone in need was not always easy, but it was necessary. He thought of the mother and daughter, alone in a strange city, and felt a responsibility to protect them if needed. Even a simple act, like fixing a door, could build a bridge of trust between strangers. Ethan sat down in his chair, staring out at the rain-soaked streets. He felt a quiet satisfaction, but also anticipation. He didn't yet know the full story of the mother and daughter, or why they were so afraid. But he knew that he would be ready if they needed him again. Sometimes life placed unexpected responsibilities on you, and sometimes those moments revealed who you truly were, in his heart. Ethan knew one thing. That night had changed him. He had stepped into fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and come out with trust, hope, and connection. And somewhere next door, a little alien girl and her mother slept a little easier, knowing that someone cared enough to help them, even when it was strange, even when it was frightening. And for Ethan, that was enough to know that small acts of kindness could be powerful. That courage was often quiet and patient, and that sometimes helping someone else could give meaning to your own life in ways you never expected. After the night Ethan fixed the door, the small alien girl and her mother slowly began to let him into their lives. At first it was subtle small gestures, quiet nods, and cautious glances. But Ethan could feel a change. The fear that had always hung around them like a shadow seemed to lessen just a little. He didn't yet know why they were so afraid, but he sensed that trust, once given, could grow over time. The following days were quiet. Ethan returned to his usual routine, taking care of Liam, working and managing the household chores. But he often found his thoughts drifting to the neighbors next door. He wondered what their life had been like before moving here, what had caused such fear in the mother, and how the little girl was coping with a world so unfamiliar and frightening. There was something about them, something fragile, yet strong, that kept tugging at his heart. One evening, as Ethan was coming back from work, he noticed the little girl standing at the door again. She wasn't alone this time. Her mother stayed in the background, peeking cautiously from the hallway. Ethan smiled and waved. The little girl's face lit up, and she motioned for him to come closer. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, her voice full of a quiet excitement that made him smile. "Hello," he replied gently. "How are you two doing?" The mother's eyes flickered nervously, but she gave a small nod. It was the first time Ethan saw her relax even a little. The little girl tugged on his hand. "Can you help us again?" she asked. "Something is broken inside. It's not like the door, but Mommy doesn't want to touch it." Ethan followed her into the apartment, curious and cautious. He realized that helping them was becoming more than just fixing things. It was about offering comfort, a sense of security. Inside, he saw a small, intricate panel on the wall that controlled the apartment's internal functions. It had been damaged slightly, probably during their move, and it was making the mother anxious. Ethan knelt down and examined it carefully. "This looks a little tricky," he said gently, noticing the mother watching every move he made. "But I think I can fix it." The little girl's eyes brightened with hope, and she held on to her mother's hand tightly. Ethan began working, explaining each step softly so that the mother could follow if she chose to. "See this? I'm tightening the wires here. It helps everything work smoothly." The mother watched closely, leaning in slightly. her expression slowly shifting from fear to curiosity as Ethan worked. He realized that the apartment itself was like a reflection of the mother's fear. Every corner was neat and quiet, almost too quiet, as if anything unexpected could cause chaos. Small decorations were carefully placed, nothing loose or out of place. Even the lighting was soft, avoiding harsh brightness. Ethan understood that the mother had been trying to protect her daughter, creating a world where nothing could go wrong. But in doing so, she had made life feel fragile, tense, and lonely. Hours passed, but Ethan was patient. He worked slowly, ensuring that the panel was secure without causing any damage. The little girl watched intently, asking questions about every tool, every movement. Her curiosity was genuine, innocent, and it made Ethan smile. He could see the spark of joy returning to her eyes, a joy that had been missing when he first met them. Finally, the panel was fixed. Ethan tested it carefully, showing the mother how it worked. "See, it's safe now," he said gently. The mother's eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, grateful smile. The little girl clapped softly, her excitement barely contained. She hugged her mother tightly, whispering something in her language. Ethan didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear relief, gratitude, and a sense of safety. After that evening, the bond between them grew stronger. The little girl often visited Ethan's apartment, sometimes alone, sometimes with her mother. She played quietly with Liam, sharing stories and laughter. Liam was thrilled to have a new friend, someone who was curious and imaginative. Together, the children explored small adventures, making paper airplanes, building small towers, and pretending they were explorers in a distant land. Ethan watched them, feeling a warmth that he hadn't felt in years. The mother, too, began to change. She would occasionally step into Ethan's apartment, bringing small gifts, freshly baked food, flowers, or something special for Liam. Her movements were cautious, but there was a growing trust in her eyes. Ethan understood that this trust had been earned slowly through patience, kindness, and simple acts of help. The fear was still there, lingering beneath the surface. But it was no longer overwhelming. One day, while Ethan was helping the mother organize a few shelves, he noticed her hands trembling slightly. She paused and looked at him, her voice quiet. "I've never felt safe like this before," she admitted. Ethan nodded, understanding her completely. "It's okay," he said gently. "You are safe now. I'll make sure nothing happens to you or your daughter while I'm here." The mother's eyes filled with tears. But they were not tears of sadness, they were tears of relief. Over time, Ethan also learned more about their story. The mother had come to Earth seeking safety, fleeing dangers she could not name aloud. She had hoped for a place where her daughter could live without fear, where they could blend in, but the world outside had made her anxious. Ethan realized that her fear was not weakness, it was love, a protective instinct for her child. And in helping them, he had become part of their small, fragile world of safety. The little girl often sat beside Ethan while he worked on small repairs. She would ask questions, sometimes giggling at his explanations, sometimes marveling at the tools. Her curiosity was endless, and Ethan found himself enjoying every moment. Liam, too, loved having a companion. The three children formed a unique bond. Bridging differences and fears with laughter and play, evenings became moments of quiet togetherness. Ethan would bring small treats, and the mother would let the children play safely while she watched. The apartment, once tense and filled with fear, slowly became a place of light, laughter, and warmth. Ethan felt a sense of pride in seeing the mother and daughter begin to trust, to live without constant worry, if only for a short while. But despite these small joys, Ethan knew that danger still lingered. He could sense it in the cautious glances, the quiet movements, and the way the mother flinched at sudden sounds. He understood that their life was not fully safe, that the world outside could still pose threats. Yet, for now, he focused on what he could do, provide safety, comfort, and friendship. Sometimes, that was enough. One rainy afternoon, Ethan noticed the mother standing at her door watching the street cautiously. He approached quietly, offering a gentle smile. "Is everything okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes." For now, she replied. Ethan understood. There would always be fear, always moments of worry, but trust had taken root. And with trust, there was hope. Ethan realized that life with these neighbors was not just about fixing doors or panels. It was about building confidence, showing care, and helping them feel human connections in a world that had been frightening and unknown. He had become more than a neighbor. He had become a guardian, a friend, someone who could bring stability to their small, fragile world. Days turned into weeks, and the little alien girl and her mother slowly became part of Ethan's life. They laughed, played, and shared small stories. The mother would occasionally cook, sharing meals with Ethan and Liam. The children would run through the apartment, giggling and exploring. And in all of it, Ethan found a sense of purpose and joy he had not felt in years. Yet Ethan remained cautious. He knew their presence was not ordinary, and the world outside could be unforgiving. But he also knew that fear did not have to define life. Through patience, understanding, and courage, he had created a small space where trust could grow. And in that space, the little girl's laughter, her mother's soft smiles, and the warmth of human connection proved that even the most fragile hearts could heal, given care and kindness, and so life continued quietly. Ethan, Liam, the little girl, and her mother formed a delicate, beautiful routine, each moment filled with small acts of care. Every laugh a tiny victory against fear, every smile a proof that kindness could bridge worlds. Ethan realized that even in the face of uncertainty, one person could make a difference. And for the little alien girl and her mother, he had become that difference, a human who stepped in when they needed help most. Life had slowly settled into a quiet rhythm for Ethan and the little alien girl and her mother. But it was not without its challenges. Each day brought small joys and tiny struggles. The little girl, whose name was Lyra, became a regular presence in Ethan's apartment. She laughed freely with Liam, her bright eyes full of curiosity, while her mother, Mara, observed cautiously from a distance. Every smile, every shared meal, every small act of kindness was a small victory against the fear that haunted them since their arrival. Ethan found himself spending more time next door than he had ever imagined. He fixed small things in their apartment, helped organize shelves, and sometimes just sat quietly while Mara went about her chores. He noticed that the mother's fear was slowly easing. The tense way she had carried herself was softening, and she began to respond to Ethan's gentle words with quiet nods and occasionally small smiles. It was as if his presence alone brought her a sense of safety she had not known for a long time. One afternoon, while Ethan was helping Mara repair a small water leak in the kitchen, Lyra was running around with Liam, giggling and playing a game of tag. Ethan laughed softly, enjoying the sound of children at play. Mara paused in her work, watching them with a faint smile. Ethan noticed her eyes lingering on the children, and he realized that despite her fear, she was starting to allow herself moments of normalcy. But peace was fragile. The city outside was not entirely safe for Mara and Lyra. There were rumors of authorities searching for those who did not belong. People who had come from other worlds or were different in ways that others could not understand. Ethan knew this danger existed, even if Mara did not fully speak of it. Her caution, her careful movements, and the way she always glanced toward the door suggested that she had experienced threats before. Ethan wanted to protect them, but he also understood the importance of giving them space. He could not force trust. It had to grow naturally. So he continued helping in small, practical ways. He repaired a broken light, fixed a loose cabinet, and even helped Mara adjust the heating system so the apartment would be comfortable during the cold nights. Each act, though small, reinforced the trust Mara had begun to place in him. One evening, as the rain fell softly against the windows, Lyra approached Ethan with a question. Can we ever go outside without being scared?" she asked quietly, her small voice trembling. Ethan crouched to her level, meeting her wide eyes. "One day," he said gently. "But for now, it's okay to stay safe. You are still very young, and it is normal to be careful. But I promise one day you will be able to explore freely." Lyra nodded, clinging to his hand for a moment before running back to her mother. The bond between Ethan and the small family grew stronger. He began to understand their needs without them saying much. Mara still communicated sparingly, but her actions spoke volumes. She would prepare small snacks for Ethan, offer him help when he came over, and share quiet moments with him when Lyra was playing. Ethan sensed her gratitude, and more importantly, her growing trust. He realized that trust was more powerful than fear. It could create safety even in uncertain circumstances. However, not everything was simple. There were days when Mara's fear returned in full force. A sudden noise outside, a shadow moving in the hallway, or even the sound of children playing too loudly could make her flinch. Ethan learned to be patient during these moments. He would calmly reassure her, showing her that nothing was wrong, that they were safe, and that he was there to help. Slowly, the sharp edge of her fear softened with each passing day. One rainy night, the little family had an unexpected problem. A small leak in the ceiling caused water to drip, dangerously close to the children's play area. Mara was panicked, her hands shaking as she tried to stop the water. Ethan rushed over with towels and buckets, carefully managing the situation while calming Mara with gentle words. "It's okay," he said. "We can handle this together. Nothing bad will happen." Mara's tense shoulders relaxed slightly, and Lyra watched with wide eyes. Seeing how Ethan's calm actions turned fear into safety, moments like these strengthened their bond. Ethan realized that trust was not built in grand gestures, but in small, consistent acts of care. He became a part of their daily life in ways Mara and Lyra could rely on. Lyra began to seek him out for guidance, asking questions, exploring small curiosities, and laughing more freely. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment in seeing their growth, knowing that his presence made a difference. Despite these small victories, Ethan never let his guard down. He knew that their safety could be fragile. Rumors of outsiders searching for people who were different had grown louder. Mara remained cautious, ensuring that Lyra stayed close, that doors were always secured, and that no unnecessary attention was drawn to them. Ethan admired her vigilance, understanding that this fear was rooted in love and protection, not weakness. One afternoon, Mara invited Ethan to sit with them while they had tea. It was a quiet moment, one of the first times she had invited him into their personal space, without urgency or fear. Lyra sat on the floor, drawing pictures while the mother poured the tea. Ethan noticed how careful Mara was, ensuring everything was safe and comfortable. He sipped his tea slowly, feeling a sense of calm that had been missing from his life for years. It was during moments like this that Ethan realized how much they had come to rely on him. He was no longer just a neighbor fixing doors and panels. He had become a protector, a friend, and a source of comfort. Mara's trust, though quiet and cautious, had grown steadily. Lyra's laughter, curiosity, and growing confidence showed that even in a world filled with fear, safety and happiness were possible. Yet, as peaceful as these moments were, the outside world remained uncertain. Ethan knew that their safety was temporary, that danger could appear at any moment. But he also knew that fear should not control life entirely. His presence allowed Mara to breathe, allowed Lyra to play, and allowed a small sense of normalcy to exist in an otherwise fragile life. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan continued to help in small, meaningful ways. He repaired minor damages, assisted with household chores, and spent quiet time with the children. Mara gradually began to speak more, offering small stories about her life before coming here. Her hopes for the future and her fears of the past. Ethan listened patiently, providing comfort through understanding and patience. Lyra, meanwhile, thrived. She laughed openly, played with Liam, and began to ask questions about the world around her. Ethan taught her small things: how to fold paper, how to build simple toys, and how to solve little problems carefully. Lyra's joy became infectious, spreading to Ethan, Liam, and even Mara. It was a slow transformation, but one that marked the first real steps toward a life filled with trust and hope. Through all of this, Ethan learned an important lesson. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Mara and Lyra were courageous in their own ways, facing a world that was often unfriendly and uncertain. Ethan realized that by standing beside them, helping them in small ways, he too became stronger. Together, they formed a fragile but resilient unit, each person supporting the other, and yet Ethan remained vigilant. He knew that one day circumstances could force difficult decisions. The authorities or other dangers could appear, and their safety could be threatened. But he also knew that the trust they had built, the bond they had formed, and the courage they had nurtured would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, he focused on the present and laughter, small victories, and the quiet moments of connection that made life meaningful. And so, life moved quietly in the small apartment. Ethan, Mara, and Lyra continued to navigate the delicate balance between fear and trust, danger and safety. Each day brought small challenges, but also small victories. Every laugh, every smile, every moment of calm built a stronger sense of security. And for Ethan, there was a growing realization that these moments, these simple acts of care, were shaping something far greater than repairs or protection. They were shaping a family, bound not by blood, but by trust, courage, and love. Ethan had grown accustomed to the quiet rhythm of life with Mara and Lyra. Their small routines, laughter, and shared meals had created a fragile sense of peace that made the apartment feel like home. Yet he knew that the outside world could not be entirely trusted. Rumors of authorities searching for people who were different had grown louder, and Ethan understood that this peace might not last. One afternoon, as he returned from work, he noticed Mara pacing nervously near the window. Her hands were clasped tightly, her eyes scanning the streets outside. Lyra stood beside her, clutching her mother's hand. Ethan felt a sudden tension in the air, a subtle shift that told him something was wrong. "What's happening?" he asked gently. Mara shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "They might be coming soon," she said. "We have to be careful." Ethan's heart sank. He knew what this meant. The authorities or some other force could appear at any moment, and Mara and Lyra's safety would be at risk. But he also knew that fear alone could not dictate their lives. He looked at Mara, then at Lyra, and saw the worry in their eyes. In that moment, he made a decision. He would do everything he could to protect them, no matter the danger. That evening, Ethan began preparing. He checked the doors, reinforced weak spots, and made sure everything was secure. Mara helped, moving quietly but efficiently, while Lyra watched from a safe corner. Ethan gave them instructions calmly, explaining what to do if anyone came. He wanted to instill a sense of confidence, even in the midst of fear. "Stay together," he said gently. "Trust me. I'll take care of everything else." As night fell, the tension outside grew. Shadows moved in the streets, and the sound of footsteps echoed faintly in the distance. Ethan could feel his pulse quicken, but he remained calm. He knew that panic would only make things worse. He moved quietly through the apartment, checking locks and reinforcing doors. Mara followed his lead, her hand steadying slightly with each instruction he gave. Lyra clung to her mother, but looked at Ethan with wide, trusting eyes. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ethan froze, listening carefully. The knock was firm, but not aggressive, almost cautious, as if the person on the other side did not want to startle them. Mara's hand tightened around Lyra's. Ethan nodded to reassure them, then moved to the door slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Who's there?" he called softly. No answer. Just another knock, a little louder this time. Ethan realized there was no time to hesitate. He instructed Mara and Lyra to move to a safer part of the apartment, one where they could not be seen. Lyra clung to her mother, her small body trembling. Ethan knelt and whispered, "Stay quiet. Everything will be okay. I promise." Mara nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, and led Lyra to the corner of the room. Away from the door, Ethan opened the door just enough to peek outside. Two figures stood there, unfamiliar and serious. They were authority figures, and Ethan understood immediately that this could escalate quickly. But he did not panic. He thought quickly, remembering the layout of the building and the small passageways that could be used to his advantage. He needed to buy time and protect Mara and Lyra. "I'm here to help," he said calmly. "Please, Just wait. There's no need for any trouble. The figures did not respond immediately, but Ethan could see hesitation in their posture. He took a deep breath and stepped aside slightly, opening the door a bit more while keeping a protective stance. His goal was simple: prevent anyone from entering the apartment while giving Mara and Lyra a chance to move safely. Inside, Mara held Lyra close. "Ethan," she whispered, fear in her voice. "What do we do?" Ethan's heart ached at the sight, but he remained calm. "We stay quiet," he said. "Trust me. I'll guide you through this." He motioned for them to follow him to a small service exit at the back of the apartment. It was hidden and rarely used, perfect for a quick escape. Mara hesitated, but Ethan's steady voice reassured her. They moved silently, Lyra clutching her mother's hand tightly. Until they reached the exit, Ethan opened the door just enough for Mara and Lyra to slip through. "Go now," he whispered urgently. The mother and daughter ran, their small figures disappearing into the night. Ethan watched them go, knowing that he could not leave them alone. He stepped back into the apartment, closing the door and preparing for what would come next. The authorities, or whoever they were, had knocked louder now. Ethan could hear voices demanding entry, questioning who was inside. But he remained calm. He knew that confrontation could be dangerous. But he also knew that he had to protect the apartment long enough for Mara and Lyra to reach safety. He used every tool, every skill he had to fortify the doors. Creating a temporary barrier that would hold just long enough, minutes felt like hours. Ethan's heart raced, but he focused on his breathing, on keeping calm. He could hear the faint footsteps of Mara and Lyra moving further away, and he felt a deep relief knowing they were safe for now. He stayed vigilant, moving quietly and efficiently, doing everything he could to ensure that the intruders would not gain access. Finally, the commotion outside subsided. Ethan listened carefully, hearing the distant voices fade. He knew that Mara and Lyra had successfully escaped, though he could not yet see them. He allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but remained alert. The danger might not be fully gone, but the immediate threat had passed. Later that night, Ethan found Mara and Lyra hiding in a safe location nearby. Lyra ran into his arms, and Mara hugged him tightly, gratitude and fear mingling in her embrace. Ethan held them close, feeling the warmth and relief that came from keeping them safe. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're safe now. Nothing will hurt you." The mother and daughter clung to him, their trust in him complete. In the days that followed, Mara and Lyra remained hidden, moving quietly from place to place. Ethan guided them, helping them find temporary safety while ensuring they had food, warmth, and comfort. Each moment was tense, but each moment also strengthened their bond. They had become more than neighbors. They were a small family, united by trust, courage, and care. Eventually, it was time for Mara and Lyra to leave the city. Ethan knew this was necessary for their long-term safety. He accompanied them to a secure location, ensuring that every step was careful and planned. As they prepared to part, Lyra hugged him tightly, her small voice trembling. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "You saved us." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "We will never forget you," she said softly. Ethan watched them disappear into the night, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and sadness. He knew they were safe, and that was what mattered most. But he also knew that his life would never be the same. He had risked everything to protect them, and in doing so, he had discovered a courage and purpose he had not known he possessed. Returning home, Ethan sat quietly with Liam, reflecting on everything that had happened. He realized that small acts of kindness, moments of courage and trust had the power to change lives. Mara and Lyra had found safety, and he had found a deeper sense of meaning. Their brief time together had shown him that one person could make a difference. Even in the face of fear and uncertainty, though the little family was now far away, their presence remained with him. He knew that the bond they shared could never be broken, even by distance. And in that quiet apartment, Ethan felt a sense of peace. He had stepped into danger, faced uncertainty, and emerged as a protector, a friend, and a human who made a real difference in someone else's life. And so, life continued quietly, but Ethan was changed forever. He knew that courage was not about the absence of fear, but about acting despite it. He had helped a mother and daughter escape danger, given them hope, and in the process, had discovered a strength and purpose within himself. In the world outside, uncertainty still existed. But Ethan had learned that even small acts of kindness could create ripples of hope, courage, and lasting impact.